Hi, my name is Susie Boer. I would like to share with you a poem I've written titled Doolittle's Raid. You'll probably notice that it's modeled after the poem Paul Revere's Ride by Longfellow, partly because both poems talk about an event in history where great courage was shown, and also coincidentally they both happened on April the 18th. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy it. Doolittle's Raid by Susie Boer. Listen, my children, and you shall hear a story of pilot and bombardier on the 18th of April, 1942, when Doolittle and his crew answered Japan with defiance, not fear. Perhaps you have heard, oh, do you remember how Japanese planes dropped bombs on Pearl Harbor on a calm, peaceful Sunday in early December, sinking ships, burning buildings with unabashed ardor? "Tora, Tora, Tora!" cried Fuchida, the captain. From his cockpit he cheered over all the destruction. Though some had predicted Japan's warlike arm, others were fooled by the diplomat's charm, and no one had risen to sound the alarm. Through that fateful dawn sped the rising sun. Pearl Harbor woke up to a battle begun. Japanese warriors like samurai of old dreamed of the victory tales to be told. Plane after plane followed Captain Fuchida's, dropping their caches of deadly torpedoes, dodging defenses like pesky mosquitoes, then waving goodbye with a proud sayonara, leaving behind devastation and horror. Clouds of black smoke, men drowning and dying. The rising sun showed its imperial powers. The naval base stunned in one day's early hours. 4 times hit, Arizona left undersea lying. Such an infamous day the world will remember. For just a brief moment America cowers, heads bent in grief this 7th of December. Roosevelt strong in a high-level meeting, no more talks with Japan, no more grievances aired. On December the 8th, the war is declared. Sleeping giant no more, we will not be retreating. The president speaks to challenge the nation, saying Sunday's attack, done without provocation, was followed by more attacks, pulled off with ease. Almost all Asia's islands hit by Japanese. Hong Kong, Philippines, Guam, and Midway exploding in flame every day after day. The red rising sun had the world on its knees. Young men are enlisting, all ready to go, preparing for conflict, both distant and near. But as the days pass, faith gives way to fear. How would we fight back and conquer our foe? Britain sends battleships, the Prince of Wales, like the old man of war, but with engines, not sails, and another, the Repulse, to guard Singapore. But soon both ships hit, massive victims of war. American and British ships sunk below? How to strike back, does anyone know? Wherever they fly, Japan's Air Force prevails. From Europe, the Nazis join force with Japan. World War II has erupted across the globe's span. Continent to continent, caught up in strife, and freedom, dear freedom, now fights for its life. Places with sea barriers, vast like Japan's, mean opponents in war must make strategic plans. To hit Japan's islands, the hoped-for solution, but the level of tactics this crisis demands. The problems all lie in the plan's execution. Could twin-engine bombers be launched from a ship? Aircraft carriers lacking a long landing strip? And each bomber would carry a great heavy load of weapons intended to land and explode. And if the planes managed to get in the air, they would need a long airstrip to land on elsewhere. Still a plan was devised, an idea set in motion for the carrier Hornet to head across the ocean. The planes to be used, the B-25, an almost unheard of, remarkable notion, with no guarantees crews would come back alive. Army General Arnold called in a good man, a daring test pilot, James H. Doolittle, who had never turned back from an aviation riddle. The general asked him, "Can you do this plan?" For 20 years past, Jimmy'd been flying planes, achieving some almost impossible gains. If he couldn't take this job, what future remains? The world needed someone to answer Japan. Test takeoffs were tried on the Hornet's short strip. The planes lifted off with success on each trip. The Hornet would carry each plane and each raider, 16 bombers' crews of 5 well-trained men, the pilot, co-pilot, the gunner, and then a skilled bombardier and the navigator. Doolittle modified planes to be lighter, so they could fly farther, so they could fly faster. Most bombing missions were escorted by fighter, but this was no ordinary mission. The country's morale needed this expedition. All must be done to avoid a disaster. The plan was purposeful, strong, and bold. Doolittle drilled the men night and day, and yet those servicemen were not told the goal of the mission until it had started. A Navy ship, Army airplane crews, caused some conflict until they had all heard the news, where those planes would be going once they departed. The Tokyo Raid, soon to be underway. The plan was for planes to stay on the carrier, take off with their bombs when close to Japan. Then seen by a Japanese boat, they were warier. They must take off. It was now or never. Success, if they made it, would bless them forever. They ran from their bunks, grabbed their gear, every man. The weather was stormy. Not one hesitated. Not one single raider dreamed of ditching. Doolittle led, the rest followed as slated, though the waves were high and the ship was pitching. You know the rest in the books you have read, how the Doolittle raiders fired and fled over Japan, bombing targets they'd chosen, then heading toward China with darkness closing. Too low on fuel from the extra long flight, they bailed from their planes, jumping into the night. Most hit ground safely. On impact, 3 died, 8 taken captive by the Japanese side. The magnificent feat that happened that day of April 18, 1942, gave America hope in a power that was true, that would defend our nation and enter the fray. Doolittle feared that his victory was partial. So many planes crashed, that meant a court-martial. But waiting for him on American soil, a Medal of Honor for courage and toil. And whenever tyranny threatens our lives, the people will think of that momentous day, the roar of the engines of B-25s, and how Jimmy Doolittle came up with a way.